If you have two shoes, please sell one and buy a sword. If you have two trousers, please sell one and buy a sword. Because now it is time for revolution, and this revolution is no longer on the streets. This revolution is not about burning cars. This revolution is about building cars and selling them to make our own money. Essentially, this revolution is in the mind, because if your mind is not under your control, the one who controls your mind will control your body and make of you a tool of your own oppression and a tool to oppress your own people. Peace and love, freedom and decolonization to all African people from wherever you find yourself, on the continent or in the diaspora. We greet you with our revolutionary greetings by saying peace and love. My name is King Kabbalah from the African Continental Unity Party, ACUP. African Continental Unity Party is a global Pan-African movement that is emerging, and it's transforming itself rapidly into political parties in every African country where we settle ourselves. And our vision is to rebuild Africa as a global power base. So if you like to know more about us, please find the link in the description below to see more about what we do and what we have been doing. Brothers and sisters, it is a pleasure to have you on our weekly rendezvous where we talk about things related to the African liberation and African emancipation. And today, quickly, we are going to discuss certain aspects that are very important for our liberation. As you know, it is impossible for one to come straight out of colonialism or out of slavery into a freedom without having to follow certain steps or to go through a certain process, which is very necessary to condition or to recondition the minds of the previously colonized person to then begin to live and function as a free entity or as a free person or free people in general term. Now, that's why we mostly talk about this liberation or this revolution is firstly in the mind. It's because if our mind have not been reconditioned to accept the necessity of freedom or even to understand what it takes to be free and to be self-reliant, then we won't be able to achieve anything, because everything that we want, we will want to achieve them by protest, by marching, and by riots, which cannot bring sustainable freedom or development or prosperity as we are expecting in Africa. So it all begins in the mind. And today I want to talk about certain change of mindset that are very important for our freedom to become effective. Number one thing that I want to discuss is that we need to accept our condition. You see, what we are doing currently is laying a foundation for the future generations to build a strong Africa as a global power base, as I've just explained. So laying this foundation means that something has been destroyed before, so we want to rebuild Africa. So we cannot correctly rebuild Africa if we don't first of all understand what has been destroyed, if we don't understand what we have lost, so that we can then, by that moment, when we understand what has been destroyed, what has been stolen from us, we can then begin to rebuild Africa as a global power base. So this is like a diagnostic that we want to do. We have to do a proper diagnostic of our situation as African people. From then we'll be able to see what we can do to repair or to restore what has been destroyed in us as African people. And the first thing that we have to begin accepting in our mind and adopting is the fact that we have not yet liberated. So the reason this is important is because we mostly talk about development. We mostly talk about economic development, infrastructural development. We mostly talk about so and so, things that must come in the second position after the most important thing which we need, which indeed is the liberation. Because a people or a person who is not yet liberated cannot talk about development. A person who lives in a custody or in a jail cannot talk about development unless if he talks about the development of his prison cell. So the first thing that has to be achieved by a person who is in a jail is to get his liberation. And that is the reality of African people today. That is our reality, globally speaking, is that either those who were taken out of Africa and those who remained in Africa, we are still living under the hegemony of Western imperialism. We have not yet freed ourselves from those conditions. And I'm going to explain it simply by taking the example of African independence, actually, the independence of African countries, to be more precise. You see, when the Western powers or oppressors came to Africa, they found us as African people, living as African people with our empires, our kingdoms, the way that we were organized, the trading among ourselves, and also trading with the outside world, like Asian stuff like that in Africa. They found us literally living as African people. So they destroyed us, right? They destroyed us. They stole our culture. They stole our spirituality. They stole our resources. They stole our identity. They stole everything that actually was the foundation of African personhood. Now, look at this. If a person comes in your house and steals your belonging, for example, somebody comes in your house and steals your TV, when that person is brought to justice, there must be a kind of work that we can call the work of restoration or reparation. And that person must be able to restore the value of what he stole from you, or actually the same thing that he stole from you. He cannot steal from you a TV and repay you a telephone unless that telephone is equivalent to the value of the TV that he stole from you. He cannot steal from you, your money and pay you back a knife. It doesn't work like that. So he has to pay back the money that he stole from you. So it is the same thing with European. They came to Africa and stole everything that was constituting the African identity. Now in the 1960s, the period of the so-called independence in Africa, what did they restore to us? What did they, pay back, in terms of what they stole for, about a century or even before the century? What did they, pay back to us? What did they restore to us as criminals? As they recognized that they were barbarians, they were criminals, they had to be brought to justice. They had to repay back what they stole from us. The question is, what did they restore? What did they pay back? They restored us as a Congolese, as Nigerian, as Zimbabwean, as Ghanaian, as Senegalese, as all these colonial enclosures which are now in Africa. And yet they did not find these things when they came to Africa. Remember, when they came to Africa, they found us living as African people, organized in the way we were organized. And that is what they stole from us. They stole from us our tradition, our culture, our spirituality, our mindset. And then when it comes a time for reparation, they are now transforming us into little British, little Portuguese, and little French, according to who colonized you. That's what we are today. So the bottom line is the true freedom, the true independence that our ancestors, our forefathers were fighting for has not yet been done, has not yet been achieved. Simply because the so-called African independence was considered as a gift of Western civilization towards Africa. That's what they thought about themselves. They came to Africa to civilize us as we were considered savage. They came to civilize us, to give us democracy and civilization. So these colonial projects that we call today African countries is actually considered by the Europeans a work of civilization, not a reparation for crimes that were committed by Europeans, right? So that is to say that the true freedom, the true liberation, the true independence should be the initiative and the work of African people themselves. And that's exactly what we are doing at this generation. That is what we are doing now, because what we consider as independence has been a failure for us, but has been a very tremendous successful European countries who colonized Africa and who continue to neo-colonizing Africa today. So we need to understand that we have not yet been liberated. We have not yet received or acquired the independence that our forefathers were fighting for. And therefore, our priority today is to fight, to work endlessly, day and night, to achieve our liberation and our emancipation. And from the moment that we are liberated as African people, other things will follow, such as development, such as prosperity, such as economic prosperity and stuff like that. And that is why Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said that seek ye first the political freedom, and everything else will be added unto you. And he was right, because today we are not yet free. We have not yet been freed, simply because when Europeans came, they stole us, they destroyed us as African people. But at the independence period, at the independence time, they transformed us into colonial enclosures, into countries which they did not find in Africa. They did not find Nigeria, Ghana, all these countries in Africa. They found African people. So they had to restore us as we were before, right? So what we are now is a failed state, as a project of neocolonialism. So we need to understand that as a first point, very important, that our job today is to work for the restoration of our freedom that was stolen by European people, and that is being stolen even until now by them. And they are not the ones who can restore us. We got to restore ourselves. Why? Because Dr. John Henry Clark told us clearly that it's only a slave who can free himself or herself. Because if you are at your knees and somebody is sitting on your back, it's up to you to adjust yourself so that you can balance the person that is sitting on your back. And the right position that you have to take is to stand straight up. So it is our duty today to stand up as African people, not as a Congolese, not as Nigerian. That is not going to work. If it had to work, it would have been working for the past 60 years that we have been celebrating annually the African or our country's independences. So it hasn't been working simply because it's not set to work for us. It's rather set to work for the powers that are oppressing us every day as African people. So now it is time for us to come together as African people to restore ourselves, as African people to rebuild ourselves, as African people, not as a Congolese, because that's not going to work. There is no Congolese problem. and there's no Congolese solution. There's only one problem, which is the African problem, which requires an African solution. So, young Africans, you who are aspiring to become or to becoming leaders in your respective colonial enclosures, as the current setup is, what is your vision as you go into power for Africa? What is your vision for your country? Do you think that you have a future as your country? Do you have, as your individual country, do you think you have a better future in this globalized and complex world in which we are living today? It is time then to put back Pan-Africanism into power, and that is the only way we are able to change or to free ourselves as African people. So let us come together, rebuild ourselves as African people. Let us take a little break on our individualism, on our fake nationalism that we created by our oppressors, and embrace the African nationalism championed by Pan-Africanism ideologies, and begin to work to rebuild and to restore ourselves from the loss that we have incurred from our oppressors during the colonial period and today in the neo-colonialism period. That is number one. And the second thing that we need to adopt in our mind is that there's no eternal defeats and there's no eternal victory in the history of the world today. You see, Japan in 1945, for example, was considered destroyed. It was considered a defeated country. But they understood that there is no eternal victory and there is no eternal defeats in the history of humankind or human civilization. Those who are at the bottom today, if they work hard enough, tomorrow they will be on top. And those who are on top today, if they don't take care of themselves, if they lose God on themselves, if they don't study their enemies and what they are trying to do, they will find themselves tomorrow at the bottom. And that's a reality. You remember, we had Roman Empire, we had Greek Empire, we had even the Kemetic civilization. So we had all these civilizations that do not exist today as a powerful civilizations as they were during that time. Why? Because time changes, and when time changes, brings opportunities to other people. So the problem is, if we think, or if you think that you have been defeated, and you believe that your defeat is eternal, then you won't be able to do anything to change your situation or to change the status quo, and then you will remain in that condition. But if you understand that in this world, victories become defeats tomorrow, and defeats tomorrow becomes victories the next day, then you'll be willing to work to restore yourself. And that's the mindset that we need to adopt as African people. Look, Japan today, as I was saying, in 1945 was defeated, was bombed twice with the atomic bombs. There's no other country that has been bombed with that kind of weapon in this world except Japan, right? And they didn't lean on themselves to say that, okay, we have been defeated and that's over for us. America is a superpower. No, they had to study the enemy. They had to think about how the enemy was able to defeat them. And today, Japan is one of the economic powers in the world. Is buying the American bonds, right? So Japan is investing even in America as we're speaking right now. So it's the same thing with the China. China was destroyed by the Britain with opium and all those things that were done in order to undermine any effort of Chinese revival. But today China is almost the number one superpower in the world. So that is what life is. So even us as African people today, in our current condition of defeat, we have to change our mind to believe that we can rise again. The very dangerous attitude that we can adopt is to think that Africa will never change. And if we think like that, we will not even begin to lay the foundation that we are supposed to lay today for our children to live or to rebuild Africa as a global power base. We cannot do that. If we believe that we have been defeated, we will continue to embrace the fake nationalities or fake nationalism that have been created by our oppressors, such as Congolese and stuff like that. And that's even the reason why you will see in the African Union Charter, it is written that the borders inherited from colonialism in Africa are intangible and cannot be changed. So you see, this is your oppressor's project. This is your colonizers' project. And you declare yourself independent, you declare yourself free, you declare yourself self-reliant people, and then you still embracing the change or the identity that was created by your oppressors for you. What kind of freedom is that? This is simply means that we don't believe that we can rise again or we can change our reality. This is a self-defeating mindset that we have today as African people. That is the reason why it is easy for an African person to spend $4,000 to pay somebody to take him across the Mediterranean water in order to join Spain, Italy, and stuff like that. While the same money, $4,000, can be an investment capital in business to change their conditions. So you see the realities, because we don't believe in Africa anymore. We don't believe that we can change our situation. We have a defeated mindset, and this is a danger. And we cannot even hand over this type of mindset to our children and to the future generations. And unfortunately, this is what we are promoting, this defeated mindset. This is what we are doing in churches across Africa. The pastors are preaching about the blessing of a visa in order to go and live abroad, overseas. They're all preaching and pushing people to believe that in Africa there's no future. We cannot change the reality in Africa. Therefore, we need to go where we believe things will be easily done for us. So this defeated mindset that we are promoting in Africa, in school, the old image that is beautified is the image of Europe. That is what we are being actually advertised or exposed to embrace and to believe that this is the real future that we have to go for. On television, when they show the image of Africa is terrible, but when they show America, France, and other countries, it's beautiful image. All of this is a continuous works of propaganda to destroy the mindset of African people in believing in themselves and attempting to change the situation, so that we can always believe that we have been defeated and there's no hope for us. So we need to understand these two things. First of all, we need to realize our condition, which is we have not yet been liberated, and the liberation cannot be the work of colonizers or oppressors. Our liberation should be our own initiative and our own work to liberate ourselves, right? And we need to come together and restore ourselves as African people, restore our identity as African people. Congolese, Nigerian were not created by Africans, no, by the Creator. They were created by the oppressors. So we need to come together and rebuild Africa, or actually lay the foundation for the rebuilding of Africa as a global power base, either by us if we still have time, if we are still around, or mostly by our children who will come, who will replace us. And number two thing that we need to understand is there has never been eternal defeats or eternal victory in the history of human civilization. So every time you are at the bottom, you must remind yourself that you have come from the top. And one day, if you work hard enough, you can reach the top again. And every time you are at the top, you must always remind yourself that you have left the bottom and you can fall down again if you don't take care of yourself. So African people, let us change our mindset. Let us adopt the mindset of fight to liberate ourselves, to elevate ourselves, and to improve our conditions. Let us remove or get away from this defeated mindset that subconsciously make us believe that we cannot rise again, that we cannot make it again, so that every time we need to seek the approval or the collaboration of the white man, who is the same oppressor, to elevate ourselves. While the white man is very conscious about the situation, he knows that the rise of Africa is the downfall of his lifestyle, because Africa and the exploitation of Africa is what has been sustaining the lifestyle that the Europeans have been enjoying in most parts up until today. So do you think that there can be any idea that will cross the mindset of European people that will be substantial to your rise? No. So it should be our own initiative. Therefore, we need to believe in ourselves that we can make it, and we need to adopt a victory and a fighting mindset. And if we are unable to do much today, let us train our children to do better, to fight and to win this battle. I'm always saying to African people that if we are unable today to hand over to our children a better Africa, a strong Africa, at least let us hand over to them the fighting mindset, the warrior mindset, not defeated mindset that we are showcasing today in Africa, everywhere, in whatever that we do. Look at the situation of Africa today. Terrible. But look on social media. You see African dancing, African enjoying. It's like we are at the best moment of our reality, while we are at the very, very dangerous moment of our existence. Why do we show a lot of excitement, satisfaction for nothing, for poverty, for unemployment, for all this stuff that we are going through on the continent? So let us not give this kind of stuff to our children. Let us, if we have failed ourselves, let us then train them, at least to push them, allow them to explore the remaining avenues that can allow Africa to liberate itself, which indeed is Pan-Africanism. Right? Let us not expose them to the very same things that we were exposed to, which have not helped us to liberate ourselves. A lot of religion, a lot of indoctrination, dogmatic things. These things really helped us as African people? If yes, good. Let's go ahead and hand them over to our children. But if not, let's be careful. Let's be careful. I hope this message has been useful to us. And if it is, please kindly subscribe to our channel. If you haven't, like the video and share the video to encourage us, help us to reach as many people as we can, so that the message that we have, the message of African liberation and emancipation championed by the African Continental Unity Party, ACUP, can reach as many African people as possible, so that collectively we can work for our own liberation and emancipation. If you have 2 shoes, please sell one and buy sword. If you have 2 trousers, please sell one and buy sword, because now it is time for revolution. And this revolution is not on the streets, it is in the mind. Because if we are not in charge of our mind, our bodies are the tools that the oppressor will use to enslave us and to enslave our people. Freedom and decolonization, peace and love. See you again next time. Thank you very much.